Hi everyone, welcome to Life Tips by Ning. In my last video, I introduced the 8 basic trigrams in I Ching. So today is about Bagua. Bagua is a Chinese name for the sequential arrangement of those 8 trigrams. And interestingly, there are 2 different ways of arranging them. One is called the original method, and the other one is called the manifested method. So the sequences are quite different. I will focus on the rationale behind the 2 and compare the similarities and differences between the 2. Because by explaining the why, it makes us understand the foundation of I Ching better. So this is the original Bagua, which is the sequential arrangement of the 8 trigrams. Let's focus on the blue colored 4 first. So you have heaven on top, earth on the bottom, fire on the left, and water on the right. So how those 4 anchor points came about is ancient people's observation of nature's rhythm. The heaven has the 3 yang lines of trigrams. So that is the, in those observers' mind, 3 yang line matches the sky, the heaven, which is the dominating, governing energy for all of us. And the opposite side is earth, which is 3 yin lines. So that's the epitome of yin energy, which means the ground is unshakable, is super steady, is inclusive. So that is the kind of key characteristics of the yin energy. And in terms of fire, fire is this beginning of a yang energy bubbling up. So that corresponds to sunrise, which is for the east direction. And the opposite direction on the west, you have the water trigram. And water represents this yin energy growing larger and larger. So it's a transitional point of sunset from daytime to nighttime. So that's your 4 major anchor point in terms of daily rhythm. And you can apply the same concept for the 24 solar terms, which came about this Tai Chi image on the right. So the top position of this heaven trigram, that corresponds to our summer solstice for the northern hemisphere, right? So that is the most number of yang grid, which is the white colored grid on the chart. That is the extreme yang's condition. And the opposite of that, to the bottom, that corresponds to the earth trigram, which is winter solstice. And it has the maximum amount of yin energy. And on the left, you have this fire trigram, which corresponds to spring equinox. That's the transitional phase that Yang's energy is getting stronger and stronger, and the yin energy is fading away. And same for that water trigram, that corresponds to the fall equinox, where the yin energy is getting bigger, and the yang energy is fading. So that is the same 4 anchor points for this original Bagua. And once people figure out the 4 major orientation points, you have 4 different quadrants. And there become the need to further divide them up to kind of refine the differences. That's where the 4 additional trigrams came about and got placed. So that river trigram, that represents the beginning of summer. So it's a in-between stage between spring equinox and fall solstice, right? So the yang energy is definitely stronger than the spring equinox, but it's not as strong as summer solstice. And you can apply that same concept for the wind, mountain, and thunder energy, which correspond to the beginning of fall, winter, and spring. So that is the rationale behind this sequential arrangement. Before I move on to the next topic, I want to call out the importance of those 2 dots in the Tai Chi chart. So why don't we just be happy with the left side of white and right side of black, representing the interchangeable trend between the yin and yang energy. The importance of those dots actually reveal a very key knowledge point for this I Ching system, meaning that when yang is getting bigger, it doesn't mean yin is getting smaller. Its existence is being threatened by the yang. It's not a zero-sum game. It's actually simultaneous existence, meaning that even during the spring to summer season, when the yang energy is getting bigger, the yin energy is still there. It's just a matter of yang is more in the dominant viewpoint, becomes more visible for people, and yin is in the hidden view, is invisible. But it doesn't mean yin doesn't exist or its existence is getting shrinked. So that's a common misunderstanding for I Ching. That's why the two dots are there, signifying that even in the extreme state of superpower yang, yin is still there. And it's the same applies to the extreme state of yin. There's a yang dot existing there. It's more just from an observer's point of view, which is more obvious, which is more in the hidden view. But factually speaking, both powers are coexisting simultaneously. So this is the mysterious images. Some people say dated back 6,000 years ago, but the top one is called Hetu and the bottom one is called Luoshu. You really don't need to understand the translated meaning of them. All we need to know is that those are very ancient mystic pictures, and I Ching supposedly was developed based on those images. And they're saying in China that those images were ancient coded way to reveal the secret of the universe, but that's all we've got. There's no explanation, there's no scripture around them. So how we look at those two pictures is both of the white colored dot, they represent yang energy. So you use odd numbers to equate with yang energy. So the black colored one are yin energy, which translate to even numbers. And you can convert both images to the math number-based patterns on the right. So I will further go into how those patterns were kind of came about and what type of revealing knowledge is trying to show us. So the first one is called Hetu. This is the same Hetu number pattern, right? It's actually a 3D image projected onto a 2D piece of paper, because technically the yang numbers representing heaven, they're all sitting on the top. Those are all the odd yang numbers, that's white. And all the black even numbers are sitting on the earth trigram direction, representing the earth. And what's making the universe work is the interaction between the yin and yang energy. So what's causing them to commingle with each other is the magical number 5 and 10 in the middle. Without that 5 and 10, yang will stay on top and yin will stay on the bottom, and we won't have the universe we have right now because there's no interaction. And from a number perspective, you can see 2, the yin plus 5 will become the yang, and 4 of the yin plus 5 will become the 9. And 1 of this yang odd number plus 5 will give us yin, and the yang number 3 plus 5 will give us the yin number 8. So that just shows the interconnectivity between the yin and yang, and number 5 plays a critical role there. And another thing is, there's like a concept of 55 is the magical number for the universe. The reason I brought it up is in the next few videos, I'm going to show you guys how to land on a hexagram symbol using sticks, using coins, whatever method we have, right? But for that stick method, you need to start with 50 sticks. You're like, why 50? That seems to be a random number. This is the why behind that. Because if you add up all the heaven number, it's 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus 9, that's 25. And if you add up all the earth number, so it's 2 plus 4 plus 6 plus 8 plus 10, that's 30. So the heaven of 25 and the earth of 30, that's a combined 55. That is the magical number for the universe. And the reason we as humans don't have this heavenly in eternity or infinity is because in our three-dimensional world, we're losing that number 5 in the middle. We're experiencing this beginning and end, birth to death, because we're missing that magical key link of number 5. So for I Ching, we're trying to ask for help and prediction for our day-to-day human experience. That's why the universe number of 55, you can subtract the magical link of 5 from it. That's 50. 50 is the governing number that applies to our world. So that's kind of an interesting fact for I Ching. But in terms of the energy flow of this original Bagua, I think the main takeaway is it shows modern physics time synchronicity theory. What I mean by that is, if you look at the 8 trigrams, the trigrams lines goes from bottom to the top. That's how we read it. So if you look at the energy flow, so both the heaven and river trigram, right? The bottom 2 lines are 2 pure yang lines. It's called pure yang. On the left, you can see the references here. So it moves from pure yang, which you can kind of compare it to the summer, like super hot yang dominant energy, right? It moved down to this less yin energy of fire and thunder. So both fire and thunder have this first yang and then the second line of yin. So that corresponds to spring. The yang is starting to grow, but it's not as extreme as the summertime. So that's called the lesser yin energy. And then after the lesser yin, the qi should transfer to the lesser yang energy, which is the wind and water trigram, because both of those have the first line of yin and the second line of yang. So think about fall. It starts to get colder, so the dominant qi is still yin, but it's not as cold as pure winter. So the second line, you still have a yang there. So that grouping is called lesser yang. Last but not least is you have this mountain and earth trigram, which is 2 pure yin energy, right? So the flow of qi should be from pure yang to less yin to lesser yang and to pure yin. So by using that qi's flow, you can draw an infinity graph moving from heaven to river, river to fire, fire to thunder, thunder to wind, wind to water, water to mountain, and mountain to earth. And once you go through the extreme yin stage, it will become the opposite, because the extreme state won't last forever. And then earth becomes heaven again. And with that flow, we can see this infinity pattern, just another view of capturing the qi's flow movement. So that is kind of a recap of Hetu, the top picture, and its connection with the original method of Bagua, the sequential arrangement of those 8 trigrams. But how about Luoshu, the bottom chart? What's the connection between the 2 images? Luoshu is just a different way of capturing the same knowledge, but Hetu is a 3D world. It's 3D world projected on paper on the 2 dimension. But Luoshu is an elevated 4 dimension, at least 4 dimension. It's inclusive of the 3-dimensional Hetu and added more element to it. So this is the number pattern for Luoshu. This, like the below image, is a picture of my notebook. If you just simply draw lines following the number, so from 1, you draw a line to 2, to 3, 4, 5 is in the middle, right, signifying the connecting energy. 6, 7, 8, 9. This looks like the shape of a human DNA, but it looks a little messy because it's very difficult to draw a four-dimension image on a piece of paper. The closest picture I could find is to this right. So this is kind of the same flow of the universe, of this infinity energy in an elevated four-dimension world. So in addition to the both directions, it has this curved, folded dimension on top of it. So this is kind of the key to translate into manifested Bagua. So here's the second methodology of arranging those 8 trigrams, right? This is called the manifested Bagua. This is the true core thing we need to take away, because any other Chinese system using is based on this manifested version. Is not the original version, because the original version is more describing the 3D world versus this later manifested Bagua version is more showcasing the foundational ways of working of the 4D elevated dimension world. The reason it's 4D is that in addition to that kind of infinity flow I was talking about, this one also added that layer of harmony balancing between yin and yang. What I mean by that is, so this is kind of a 4-dimension projection on a piece of paper. So in reality, the 4th dimension got tweaked and distorted in space. So in reality, when you translate this 2D image to a 4D world, the wind and earth trigrams are swapped. They're actually more kind of sitting like a vertical way in the 4D world. So knowing that, if you compare the two opposite trigrams, the yin and yang are in perfect balance. So for example, fire and water, right? Fire has 2 yang and 1 yin versus water has 2 yin and 1 yang. So they're balanced of 3 yin and 3 yang. It's the same thing for thunder and river, right? So thunder has 2 yin and 1 yang versus river has 1 yin and 2 yang, but combined together is 3 yin and 3 yang. And knowing is the mirror image between wind and earth in a 4-dimensional world. So if you swap earth to the location of wind, so earth will be opposing heaven. That is perfect 3 yin and 3 yang. And it's the same between mountain and wind, right? Mountain has 1 yang and 2 yin versus wind has 2 yang and 1 yin. And combined, it's like a perfect yin and yang harmony. So that represents the foundational truth and core of our law of universe in the elevated dimension world. The reason we use it without the magical number 5 in the middle is because the application for this Bagua is for us humans living in this 3D world. So without that number 5 connectivity, it kind of decreased dimension from multi-dimensional universe down to the human level. That's why the middle part is missing. But this is kind of a quick explanation of Bagua and how they came about, how the sequence, what kind of theory is the sequence based on. And this particular manifested Bagua is very useful, but because not only it applies to the rest of this I Ching series, it's also the kind of the birthplace for other Chinese wisdom. So for example, the traditional Chinese medicine, the flow of the acupuncture path in the body is based on this pattern. And for Chinese feng shui, right, where we measure the different directions, that directional design of 24 different directions are originated from this manifested Bagua sequence. And there's also like other Chinese astrology tools. One is called Qimeng Dunjia. It's kind of a refined version of Bazi. It's like a way better tool than Bazi, but it's harder to learn. So the placement of different position is based on this manifested Bagua as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, but my main takeaway is the manifested Bagua sequence is a very key element and foundation for the rest of this I Ching series. And I hope you understand the time synchronicity concept of why this yin and yang are mirror image. We humans living on Earth have this clockwise qi flow. So going back to this one, right? Like we see time in terms of a linear way because we only see this black colored clockwise energy flow. But in reality, this counterclockwise yang energy is coexisting. We just can't see it. That's why in I Ching, when we do a prediction, you're leveraging this counterclockwise flow to kind of going back from the future to the present. That's how those hexagram symbols can give us guidance on major life decisions. It's because of this time synchronicity concept. So I just want to show the logic behind why I Ching works as a basic prediction tool. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I will see you next time. Bye.